The ashes of Vera Prime. The night sky of Vera Prime was filled with fire. What was once a peaceful colony, filled with children playing in the gardens and workers building a new life, was now nothing but smoke and ruin. The air trembled with the sound of alien weapons, their plasma beams carving through metal towers and turning homes into ashes. Screams echoed across the colony, mixed with the deep roar of alien war engines. From orbit, the attackers rained fire without mercy. They were not pirates, not raiders, but soldiers from a galactic alliance that had grown tired of humanity's slow expansion. In their eyes, humans were settlers who dared to claim too much space, so they decided to make an example. The colony of Vera Prime was chosen. A colony of 50,000 men, women, and children, erased in less than a night. Inside the burning city, a small group of survivors huddled in the ruins of a broken shelter. Among them was an old engineer, his hands shaking as he tried to repair the emergency beacon. Beside him, a young woman held her child, whispering prayers into the child's ear. They all knew the truth. No one was coming in time to save them, but maybe, just maybe, Earth would hear their last cry. Signals weak, the engineer muttered, wires sparking in his hands. He pushed the final button, and the beacon flickered to life. A distorted message escaped into the stars, a desperate scream across the void. Vera Prime is burning. We are under attack. Humanity must respond. The signal cut with a sharp crack as the shelter collapsed under enemy fire. The beacon, however, had already carried its dying words into the black of space. High above the planet, the alien fleet watched the destruction with cold satisfaction. Their commander, a tall reptilian creature with scaled armor, hissed in amusement. "Let them see this," he declared, his voice echoing across the bridge of his warship. "Let Earth watch helplessly as their children burn. Let the galaxy know humans are nothing but dust." The crew laughed, their voices cruel, their claws tapping on the metal floor. Hours later, silence fell on Vera Prime. The fires still burned, but there were no voices left to cry. The colony was dead. Its people turned to shadows on blackened walls. The alien fleet drifted away, leaving nothing behind but destruction. They thought the lesson had been delivered. They thought humans would bow, but they did not understand. On Earth, the broken signal arrived in the middle of the night. Inside a hidden chamber deep under the Terran Defense Authority, the message repeated on every screen. Static filled the room, broken words echoing like ghosts. Vera Prime, under attack. They burned us. The officers who heard it sat frozen, their faces pale with fury. A silence heavier than stone filled the chamber. It was the silence before an earthquake, the kind that promised destruction. General Arden, an old war veteran, clenched his fists. His voice was low, but it carried through the room like thunder. "They burned a human colony," he said, his eyes fixed on the dying message. "They believe we will do nothing. They believe we are weak. They are wrong." Around him, commanders shifted uneasily. Some spoke of caution, of diplomacy, of waiting for the council to respond. But deep in every human heart, the same fire was rising. The memory of Vera Prime's ashes would not be forgotten. The galaxy had crossed a line that could never be erased. Outside the chamber, the people of Earth would soon learn the truth. News of the destruction spread like wildfire. Families cried in the streets, faces turned upward toward the sky. In every city, every outpost, and every shipyard, whispers began to grow louder. Whispers of vengeance, whispers of a fleet that had been sleeping for centuries. A fleet too vast for anyone to believe. A fleet built not for defense, but for retribution. Back in the ruins of Vera Prime, the smoke still rose into the dark heavens. The colony's dead left no graves, no monuments, only ash carried by the wind. But their last cry had reached Earth, and Earth was listening. The silence of humanity was ending, and the galaxy would soon learn what it meant to awaken the wrath of mankind. The fires of Vera Prime had not only destroyed a colony, they had lit a fuse that would ignite 500,000 dreadnoughts waiting in the shadows. The Council's mockery. The Galactic Council chamber glowed with golden light, but behind the shine was arrogance. Hundreds of alien delegates sat in their tall seats, their voices filling the great hall with noise. News of Vera Prime's destruction had already reached them, and instead of silence or sorrow, the chamber echoed with laughter. They scream, they beg, and yet they expect to be treated as equals. A thick-bodied insectoid delegate sneered, its mandibles clicking. Humans are settlers, nothing more. They spread like weeds, and weeds must be burned. Another, a tall avian creature with feathers the color of steel, leaned forward. They should be grateful we do not erase Earth itself. Vera Prime was only a warning. The chamber roared with agreement. The council believed humanity would bow as all others had bowed before. To them, humans were newcomers, outsiders too young to challenge the great powers of the galaxy. And yet, one delegate did not laugh. A frail amphibian elder tapped his fingers nervously against the table, his voice low. "You mock too quickly. You forget too easily." He said, his eyes scanning the crowd. "I have studied human wars, and I tell you now, their silence is not weakness. It is the drawing of breath before the roar." The others scoffed, dismissing him with waves of their claws and wings. The chamber filled again with mockery, louder, bolder, but beneath the noise, unease began to spread like cracks in glass. For even those who mocked remembered whispers of human battles in the old days, stories of colonies defended by fleets that fought like fire itself, tales of captains who would rather ram their burning ships into enemy cruisers than surrender. Still, the arrogance held. A council decree was drafted that very night. It read, "Humanity shall receive no aid, no recognition, and no seat among the great. Their colonies are fair to burn, their fleets fair to break." Signed, sealed, and announced with pride across the stars, the galaxy's rulers had spoken. Humanity was nothing, and would remain nothing. But far away from the council's chamber, evidence of their mistake began to grow. On the edge of neutral space, an alien scout fleet reported strange movements. Their transmissions were faint, broken as though swallowed by static. One message survived. Dark shapes in the void. Massive, silent, impossible numbers. "It's them, it's..." The line cut, silence swallowing the rest. The council dismissed it, calling it fear. They said the scouts had gone mad. But not everyone agreed. Spies whispered that something stirred in Sol system, something the council had feared for centuries. A weapon hidden, a fleet unseen, a storm waiting to rise. In the dark taverns of frontier space, mercenaries told stories. They spoke of human shipyards buried inside asteroids, of dreadnoughts built in silence and hidden for generations. They laughed nervously as they told it, as though speaking the words too loud might bring the ships themselves to life. The galaxy had always believed these were myths, but myths have roots, and roots run deep. Back on Earth, the Terran Defense Authority had already begun its work. Engineers pulled ancient designs from sealed vaults. Commanders whispered to their fleets. Shipyards that had been quiet for centuries suddenly roared to life. The council might mock, but Earth was not laughing. Meanwhile, among the survivors scattered across space, something stronger than grief began to grow. The ashes of Vera Prime had lit a fire in human hearts. The people cried for vengeance, the soldiers demanded war, and the leaders knew there would be no turning back. Still, in the council chamber, the laughter continued. The delegates mocked humanity's silence. They called humans too afraid to speak. They toasted to their victory. They congratulated themselves, and as they raised their cups, they did not notice the shadow spreading behind them, because far away, in the void beyond their reach, something vast and terrible was moving. A whisper in the dark carried on every channel across every world. It said only one thing: "We are coming." The council's mockery would soon be silenced, not by words, but by the thunder of 500,000 human dreadnoughts. Whispers of the fleet across the galaxy in markets and ports, whispers began to spread like smoke carried by the wind. No one dared to speak too loudly, but everyone had heard some version of the same tale. The humans were building something vast, something hidden. In the taverns of the Orion Belt, mercenaries leaned close over their drinks, their voices low. "I tell you, a traitor vanished near Sol. His last message spoke of giants in the dark. one said. Giants? Another mocked, but his eyes betrayed unease. Yes, ships bigger than anything we've ever seen, silent, cloaked in shadows, moving like predators. The stories never stayed the same, but the core was always alike. Shadows swallowing fleets, ghost signals vanishing mid-transmission, crews who returned shaking and swore they had seen weapons bigger than cities. The council called them myths, just stories to frighten smugglers and children. But myths have roots, and these roots were growing. In refugee camps far from Vera Prime, survivors told their own tales. One woman, her face scarred from plasma, burns, whispered to anyone who would listen. They think Earth will do nothing, but I saw it. I saw their eyes when the message went out. Earth heard us. Earth will answer. The people clung to those words, for vengeance was the only hope left to them. Meanwhile, in secret, alien spies tried to uncover the truth. Small fleets were sent near the Sol system, disguised as traders, as explorers, as lost wanderers. Almost all failed to return. The few, who did, spoke only in broken voices. Shadows, they repeated. Shadows that blocked out stars. Weapons that hummed like thunder waiting to strike. And yet the council ignored the warnings. They are only rumors, one counselor laughed. Fear makes small ships see large ghosts. Humans are too poor to build fleets, too weak to strike back. But even as they mocked, unease spread in their own courts. Fear was a poison, and it was already dripping into the veins of the galaxy. Back on Earth, the silence was not idle. Shipyards hidden inside hollowed asteroids glowed with fire. Engines the size of mountains were tested in secret. The hum of power shook the void as vessels older than nations were awakened. The Dreadnoughts, once only whispered in Earth's deepest military archives, now stirred like giants stretching after centuries of slumber. In the war chamber, General Arden stood before the glowing hologram of the galaxy. His eyes traced every line of the enemy fleets, every system under their control. Around him, officers whispered, voices hard. They laugh at us, they believe we are weak, one said. Good, Arden answered coldly. Let them believe it a little longer. Their mockery blinds them. Their pride makes them deaf. When we strike, it will not be a whisper, it will be thunder. And still, the galaxy whispered. On backwater worlds, smugglers swore they had seen human convoys carrying strange cargo. In mining colonies, workers claimed whole asteroids had gone missing, swallowed by something unseen. Merchants spoke of human captains with fire in their eyes who bought supplies in silence and left with fleets no one counted. Every story was doubted, every story dismissed, but together they formed a truth too. Heavy to ignore, the whispers reached the ears of mercenaries for hire. Some grew bold, laughing at the tales. Others quietly canceled contracts against humans, refusing to fight them for fear of what was coming. Because in the heart of every whisper was a seed of terror. If even half the stories were true, then humanity was preparing something the galaxy had never seen. One night in a dark trading station near the rim, a broken transmission echoed through the halls. It was intercepted by scavengers, and though it was full of static, one sentence was clear. They are awake. The Dreadnoughts are awake. The scavengers swore they heard it, but by morning the signal was gone, wiped from every archive. No one knew if Earth had erased it or if the ships themselves carried shadows that silenced all records. On the other side of the galaxy, the council chamber laughed again. They whisper of human fleets, an ambassador said with mockery. Fables nothing more, Earth is silent. But far beyond their reach in the Sol system, the silence was not weakness. It was the silence of war being prepared. The whispers would not stay whispers for long, because soon the galaxy would see with its own eyes, and when they did, the stars themselves would tremble. Earth's decision deep under the surface of Earth, hidden beneath layers of steel and rock. The war chamber of the Terran Defense Authority glowed with red light. Holograms of star systems shimmered across the air. Fleets marked in blue and red, colonies circled in gold. The broken signal from Vera Prime still played on repeat in the room, the desperate words echoing like ghosts. Under attack, burning. Humanity must respond. Every officer in the chamber stood in silence. their eyes fixed on the floating image of Vera Prime, now nothing but ash in the void. The silence was heavy, like a storm pressing against the walls. Then General Arden stepped forward, his voice cutting through the air like a blade. They burned our people. They left no survivors. The Council laughs at our silence, and the galaxy believes we will bow. He looked around the chamber, his eyes hard as iron. Shall we bow? He demanded. No, the officers answered as one, their voices like thunder. Shall we remain silent? No, came the answer again, louder, filled with rage. Arden raised his hand and the hologram shifted. New images filled the chamber, massive ships hidden in black voids, engines glowing faintly, hulls the size of cities, blueprints older than any officer in the room, designs whispered of only in legends, the Dreadnoughts. Centuries ago, when Earth first joined the stars, our ancestors feared this day would come, Arden said, his voice low. They built shipyards in secret, buried inside asteroids, hidden in the shadows of moons. They forged weapons not for defense but for judgment, for the day the galaxy would turn its teeth against us. The chamber shook as the reality set in. The Dreadnought fleet was not a myth, not a rumor, not a ghost. It was real, and it had been waiting. A younger officer leaned forward, his voice trembling. 500,000? He whispered. 500,000, Arden confirmed. Engines larger than mountains, weapons that can shatter fleets, armor that can outlast suns. Every one of them carries the power to destroy a world. The officers stared at the hologram, awe and fear mixing in their eyes. Then why have we not used them? One asked softly. Because vengeance must be certain, Arden replied, his voice calm but burning with fire. When we unleash them, there will be no return. When they rise, it will not be a battle. It will be a reckoning. Far above Earth, in hidden shipyards across the Sol system, the awakening had already begun. Engines rumbled like thunder as long-dead dreadnoughts came alive again. Shadows moved through the void as colossal hulls drifted free from their hiding places. Hundreds, then thousands, each larger than the last. Workers watched in silence as the giants stirred. Generations of secrecy, years of quiet labor, now revealed in a storm of light and steel. The sky above Earth itself burned as docking stations prepared to release the first of them. The dreadnoughts were no longer whispers. They were real, back. In the war chamber, the officers raised their fists. Then it is decided, Arden declared. Earth will not beg, Earth will not kneel. We answer fire with fire. We answer ashes with storms. Across Earth, the news spread in whispers first, then in cries that shook cities. Families who had lost loved ones to alien cruelty stood together in the streets. Soldiers marched with pride, their armor shining under the sun. Mothers held children close and told them, "You will live to see the day they fear us." Humanity was no longer afraid. The decision was made, and there was no turning back. Meanwhile, in the outer systems, alien spies caught fragments of transmissions. Half-heard commands, strange movements, strange energy signatures. They rushed to the council, their voices trembling with panic. They are moving. The humans are moving, they cried. But the council only laughed again. They have nothing, they mocked. They are shadows, not soldiers. The council's arrogance blinded them. They did not see the Sol system burning with light as 500,000 engines roared awake. They did not hear the thunder. Rolling in the void, they did not see the storm rising, for Earth had made its decision, and the galaxy would soon understand the weight of that choice. The first shadow. The alien fleets patrolled near the edge of human space. Their ships glided through the void with careless arrogance, their lights shining like hunters searching for prey. They laughed in their comms, mocking the humans who stayed, silent. Earth hides in its cradle, one captain sneered. Let them grieve their colony. They will not fight us. But silence has weight, and silence has shadows. And soon, they would see one. It began with static. A patrol ship drifting near the empty dark suddenly reported interference. Strange readings, the officer muttered, his claws tapping on the console. Something massive is out there, but the scanners won't lock on. Before they could adjust, the stars themselves vanished. Something had moved between them and the starlight, something so large it blocked the heavens. Then the shadow revealed itself. A single human dreadnought. Drifting slowly from the void, its hull was blacker than night, its surface etched with weapons that glowed faintly like sleeping suns. It was not sleek like alien ships. It was brutal, heavy, built for war and nothing else. The patrol fleet froze in silence. Even the strongest captains felt their stomachs twist with fear. "Impossible," one whispered, his eyes wide. "It's bigger than a city." The human dreadnought turned, and with that turn power rippled through the void. Its cannons glowed, and before the aliens could even speak, a beam of white fire cut through their lead battleship. The vessel shattered instantly, torn in half, debris scattering. Into the darkness, panic filled the alien comms. "Retreat!" Someone screamed, "Engage it!" Another barked, but their voices shook. Dozens of ships opened fire, plasma beams and missiles streaking across the void. But when they struck the dreadnought's armor, the result was nothing. The great hull stood unmoved, the weapons of the aliens burning out like sparks against stone. The dreadnought answered only once more. Another blast, another ship erased. And then, in the silence, a transmission cut through every channel, a human voice, calm, cold, and merciless. "This is only the first?" Before the aliens could respond, the dreadnought vanished. One moment it filled the sky, the next it was gone, disappearing back into the shadows of deep space. The enemy fleet drifted in shock, their weapons still glowing, their crews frozen. No one spoke for several minutes because they knew what they had seen was not a rumor, not a story, not a ghost. It was real, and it was only one. The survivors fled, rushing their reports back to the council. Their voices cracked with fear as they described the dreadnought. "Larger than anything we've built," they cried, "armor like a world, weapons like stars. One ship erased two of ours before we could react. If one ship can do this, what happens if there are more?" The council chamber buzzed with noise, delegates shouting over each other. "Lies," some spat. "Exaggeration," others muttered. But a few looked pale, their eyes filled with the memory of the warnings they had ignored. One of them whispered, "The whispers are true. The fleet exists." Back on Earth in the war chamber, General Arden listened to the intercepted alien panic with cold satisfaction. The officers around him smiled grimly. "They've seen the first shadow," Arden said. "Now the fear will spread." The dreadnought was not meant to win a battle. It was meant to send a message. And that message was clear. Humanity was no longer silent. Humanity was no longer weak. Humanity was coming across the galaxy. Fear began to grow like wildfire. Merchants refused to travel near human space. Mercenaries tore up contracts that sent them against Earth. Even some governments began to whisper behind closed doors, "Perhaps we should not fight the humans." But fear never spreads fast enough. The council still mocked. The arrogant still laughed. And so the storm still gathered in the Sol system. 500,000 dreadnoughts stirred, engines rumbled, weapons charged, hulls gleamed under artificial suns. The first shadow had shown itself. But soon, the sky would be full of them, and when that day came, the galaxy would know the meaning of dread. The Armada awakens. The galaxy trembled with rumor after the first shadow appeared. Every port, every outpost, every fleet carried the story. A single human ship had erased two battleships with ease, and then it had vanished, leaving only fear behind. But if one dreadnought was enough to terrify fleets, the galaxy was not ready for what came next. In the Sol system, the silence broke. Hidden shipyards carved inside moons opened like steel flowers. Asteroids split apart, revealing the giants slumbering within. Engines the size of mountains roared awake, their thunder shaking the void. For centuries they had waited, and now they rose one by one. Dreadnoughts drifted free from their hiding places, black hulls gleaming under the light of Earth's sun, weapons glowing faintly like stars about to burn. Hundreds became thousands, thousands became tens of thousands, until the void around Sol was no longer empty. It was filled, a wall of steel and fire so vast it blocked out the stars. 500,000 dreadnoughts, lined in silence, their engines humming. The largest war fleet ever seen in the history of the galaxy. Each ship carried weapons that could erase fleets. Each ship carried vengeance for Vera Prime. And together, they were unstoppable. On Earth, billions watched from the surface, their eyes turned upward. The night skies glowed with the light of departing warships. Children stood on rooftops whispering in awe. "Those are ours," they said. "Those are human ships." Mothers wept. Fathers clenched their fists. Soldiers raised their rifles in salute. Every city echoed with the same cry, "For Vera Prime." In the war chamber, General Arden stood before the glowing map of the stars. Lines stretched outward from Sol like fire spreading across paper. Every path was marked with a target. Every target was an enemy stronghold. The officers waited for the order, their breath held, their hands tight at their sides. Arden spoke only 3 words. "Let them burn." The dreadnoughts moved, not with chaos, not with noise, but with terrifying order. Columns of warships slid across the void, their engines flaring in unison. The dark became alive with light as the armada spread outward, toward alien space, toward the Council, toward vengeance. In border systems, alien patrols froze as their sensors screamed. Massive signatures detected. One officer gasped. "Too many to count." "Too many?" Then the signals overwhelmed the scanners, entire screens going black, because the machines could not measure the size of what was coming. The Council received the first reports within days. Pale commanders rushed into the chamber, their voices cracking. "It is true, the humans. They have a fleet," they stammered. "How many?" the counselors demanded. The commanders hesitated, their throats dry. "Hundreds of thousands," they whispered. Laughter died in the chamber. The great hall that once mocked humans now, filled with fear. Some shouted for negotiations. Others demanded preemptive strikes, but in their hearts they knew it was too late. Because this was not a fleet that could be stopped. This was a storm, and storms cannot be reasoned with. Meanwhile, in the darkness between stars, the armada advanced. 500,000 dreadnoughts, gliding in silence, their weapons dormant but ready. The galaxy watched, helpless and trembling. Every whisper had become truth. Every story had become real. The armada was awake, and it was moving. Judgment of fire. The galaxy held its breath. 500,000 human dreadnoughts glided through the void, their engines blazing like suns. They moved in silence, yet their presence thundered across every star system. No fleet had ever been so vast, no armada so terrible. The first to face them was a Drakari stronghold, a fortress world protected by 100 warships and orbital cannons. The Drakari believed themselves safe. Their commanders scoffed at the whispers of human vengeance, but then the stars disappeared. The dreadnoughts had arrived. The fortress scanners shrieked, unable to process the numbers. The defenders panicked, their ships scrambled. But it was too late. One command echoed across the human fleet. "Fire." The void lit up like a second sun. Beams of white energy cut through alien ships as if they were paper. Cannon fire roared, tearing apart the fortress shields in seconds. The defenders screamed, but their voices were swallowed by fire. In minutes, the Drakari stronghold was gone, its fleet shattered, its world left in ruins. The news spread faster than light. Entire empires trembled as reports poured in. The humans were not raiding, not striking with small fleets. They were cleansing. Every system that had raised a hand against them was marked, and one by one those systems burned. In the council chamber, fear reigned. The same voices that once mocked humanity now screamed for mercy. "They will destroy us all," one ambassador cried, his wings shaking. "They cannot be stopped," another gasped. But when a trembling messenger offered to send pleas for peace, the chamber fell silent, because the humans had already answered, and their answer was fire. On Earth, the people watched the transmissions with grim pride. Every city lit up with the glow of news screens showing alien strongholds collapsing into flames. Families whispered the name of Vera Prime. Children repeated the words their parents taught them. Never again. In the war chamber, General Arden stood unmoving, his eyes on the stars. His voice was calm, steady, unyielding. They wanted to test us, he said. They wanted to see if humanity would bow. Now they see, now they understand. We are not prey, we are not weak. We are the storm that ends empires. The Armada advanced, system by system, its shadow falling across the galaxy. No planet was safe. No fleet was strong enough to resist. Every dreadnought that fired carried the memory of Vera Prime in its cannons. Every explosion was an answer to the arrogance of the Council. Entire civilizations bent under the weight of fear. Worlds that once scorned humanity now sent desperate messages of surrender. But humanity's fleet did not stop, because vengeance was not yet finished. At last, the human armada stood at the gates of the Council's own capital, a shining world surrounded by the fleets of 100 species. The defenders filled the sky, millions of ships forming a wall of steel and light. But against 500,000 dreadnoughts, it was nothing. The humans surrounded the capital like wolves circling prey, their weapons charged, their engines humming. Like gods of war, a single transmission cut through every channel heard across the galaxy. It was General Arden's voice. Cold and final, "You burned Vera Prime. Now we burn your empire. Peace was buried with our colony. Now only judgment remains." The human armada fired. The sky became fire. The galaxy that once mocked humanity now watched in silence. Because, in that moment, everyone understood. The age of mocking Earth was over. The age of fearing Earth had begun, and above the burning stars 500,000 dreadnoughts cast their shadows. Humanity had answered, and the galaxy would never forget.